In a quiet neighborhood in Southern California, Mary Thomas, a woman in her early 40s, found herself struggling to keep up with mounting bills after the loss of her husband. With a house too big for just her and her teenage son, she made a decision that seemed harmless enough: rent out the spare room. Enter Robert Mitchell, a man who at first glance seemed like the perfect tenant: polite, respectful, and eager to settle in. But what Mary didn't know was that Robert's calm exterior masked a past filled with secrets that would soon become her worst nightmare. It started with small things: strange noises at night, a locked door she wasn't allowed to open, and a feeling that she couldn't shake. As days passed, the tension between them grew, but Mary brushed it off until one evening something happened that made her question everything. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Was Robert Mitchell truly who he claimed to be? Why had he chosen Mary's home, a small, quiet place where nothing ever happened? What was he hiding from her? And most chilling of all, why had he seemed so eager to keep his life a secret? Mary had begun to ask herself these very questions, her once peaceful home now filled with a sense of dread. Was she just imagining things, or was there something far darker beneath the surface? It wasn't until she uncovered a small, seemingly insignificant detail, an envelope tucked away in the back of a drawer, that she began to see the first cracks in Robert's perfect facade. She had no idea then, but what she had stumbled upon would change everything. The truth was more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. And when Mary finally learned the horrifying reality of who Robert really was, it was already too late. Mary Thomas had always prided herself on being strong, a woman who could handle anything life threw at her. After losing her husband to a tragic accident, she found herself trying to piece together the remnants of a life she thought was stable. But the world had changed, and so had her circumstances. With bills piling up and no steady income, Mary had to make a choice. Renting out the spare room in her house was supposed to be a temporary solution, just a way to keep things afloat. Robert Mitchell seemed like the answer to her prayers. A man in his early 40s, polite, well-spoken, and eager to move in. He was the kind of tenant every homeowner dreams of. But Mary, with all her strength and independence, didn't realize just how fragile her life had become. She had no idea that this seemingly perfect stranger would soon shatter her world in ways she couldn't even begin to imagine. As Mary went about her days, trying to balance being a mother, a working woman, and a survivor, she never noticed the small changes creeping into her routine. The way Robert's presence started to feel off. At first, it was just little things: odd behaviors, sudden silences, the strange way he avoided certain conversations. But Mary, focused on the daily grind, brushed it off. Still, there was something about Robert's quiet demeanor that left her uneasy, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. It all started so innocently. Robert was a quiet, respectful tenant, and Mary was simply trying to keep the peace. But as the days went by, things began to feel off. Late one night, while Mary was in the kitchen, she heard a sound, a scraping noise coming from down the hallway. At first she thought it was just the house settling, but as the nights passed, the noises grew louder, more frequent. Then there were the strange comings and goings. Robert would leave at odd hours, always returning with no explanation. It seemed harmless at first, but the unease that crept into Mary's mind couldn't be ignored. Was she being paranoid, or was something happening right under her nose? One afternoon, while cleaning, she found a small, unmarked envelope tucked away in a drawer that Robert had always kept locked. Inside was a note, hastily scribbled, something that made her blood run cold. "I'm not who you think I am." The words were simple, but their meaning was anything but. Panic set in as Mary wondered what she had overlooked, what she hadn't seen. And as the weight of the words sank in, she knew one thing for certain. This man, this stranger in her house, wasn't just hiding from his past. He was hiding something much darker. But before she could gather her thoughts, before she could confront Robert about the note, he was already gone. Just like that, vanished into the night. Terrified and desperate for answers, Mary knew she couldn't keep this to herself any longer. She went to the police, hoping they could help, but what she didn't expect was how quickly things would spiral out of control. The more they dug, the more questions arose. Who was Robert Mitchell really? His background, it turned out, was a web of lies and deception, with no clear answers to explain his sudden disappearance. Police began investigating his past, tracing his steps, and speaking to those who had crossed paths with him before. But the deeper they went, the more unsettling the truth became. Robert wasn't just an ordinary man who had fallen on hard times. He had a criminal history, one he'd kept well hidden from everyone, including Mary. Interviews with former landlords revealed strange behavior, and former coworkers spoke of unsettling incidents. But it wasn't until the police uncovered a connection to a string of similar disappearances across the state that things truly took a dark turn. How many others had Robert deceived? How many had trusted him, only to have their lives forever changed? Mary's nightmare was just beginning, and she now understood that the man she had trusted so innocently had a much darker side than she could have ever imagined. But the biggest shock came when the police uncovered Robert's past, and everything they thought they knew about the case suddenly changed. The investigation into Robert Mitchell's past revealed a chilling truth. He wasn't just a man running from his mistakes. He had a hidden life, one far darker and more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. As police combed through his records, they uncovered a trail of deceit, a series of false identities, and an alarming connection to several cold cases. What struck Mary the hardest, however, was the discovery that Robert wasn't just avoiding the law. He was actively targeting vulnerable women just like her. His pattern of moving in, gaining trust, and then disappearing without a trace had been repeated time and again. But what he was really after, no one knew. Some thought he might be involved in a larger criminal network, while others believed his motives were purely personal, a twisted obsession that had taken root in his mind. As the truth began to unfold, Mary felt the walls closing in. She had no idea that by opening her door to a stranger, she had unknowingly walked straight into a trap. With every new revelation, the danger to her and her son grew more real, and the nightmare that Robert had brought into her life was far from over. But just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, what happened next would shock everyone to the core. In a moment that changed everything, the police made an unexpected discovery that turned the case upside down. Just when Mary and the police thought the case was closed, a shocking new piece of evidence emerged, throwing everything they thought they knew into question. A seemingly innocuous detail, a photograph found in Robert Mitchell's old belongings, revealed a terrifying connection. The man who had deceived her for months wasn't just a stranger. He had a link to her past that Mary had never seen coming. Years earlier, during a brief and forgotten moment of her life, she had crossed paths with someone who had ties to Robert. It was a relationship she had long buried, one she never imagined would resurface in such a devastating way. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation, casting doubt on everything she had believed. Had Robert been stalking her for longer than she realized, or was there something more sinister at play? As the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Mary was left to confront a painful truth. She had never truly been safe. With Robert's capture, the immediate threat was over, but the emotional scars would remain. In a courtroom, the jury deliberated, and Robert was sentenced for his crimes, but for Mary, the real trial had just begun. She would now live with the fear of never knowing how deep the betrayal ran, or how close she had come to losing everything. And in the quiet aftermath, as she tried to rebuild, she couldn't help but reflect on the lessons learned the hard way. What does this story say about trust? About the dangers of letting strangers into our lives without truly knowing who they are? Mary's nightmare had ended, but the scars, both visible and invisible, would stay with her forever. What do you think? Was Mary too trusting, or was this just a tragic coincidence? Drop your thoughts below. Do you believe she could have seen the warning signs, or was Robert's deception too clever to detect? Was justice served, or did the system fail her in some way? We'd love to hear what you think about this chilling story. And if you thought this was shocking, wait until you hear the next one. We've got more real-life crime twists coming your way. You won't want to miss it. Subscribe now so you don't miss any of our future videos and get ready for the next shocking twist. Like this video if you want to hear more stories like this, and don't forget to subscribe for weekly updates. Your support helps us bring more of these real stories to light. Stay tuned, stay safe, and thank you for watching.